PSD family. I know that this is a strange and unprecedented time for us, but I'm truly grateful for the technology God has blessed us with so that we can stay connected even when we're apart, and we can open God's Word together and be comforted and find peace and hope in a time of chaos. I'm really grateful for our shepherds for keeping on top of this and staying organized with these pre-recorded sermons and the at-home worship plan that we're going to be sending out today. Today is actually Saturday for me, and I'm grateful for Eric Quist being here to work the AV room on a Saturday morning with me and Adam making these pre-recorded sermons. And really grateful. Poor Eric, he's going to have to listen to Adam and I twice in a row, 2 days in a row, but so happy that he can be here. We're going to get into God's Word this morning, but before, I still want to make our normal evangelism challenge, and the challenge really today is to be a light. Be a light. They say that the darker the night, the brighter the stars. And when people are panicking and worrying and being filled with anxiety, this is a great time as Christians for us to be lights in the world, to not contribute to the panic, to not contribute to the politics, but just to give people hope and to pray for people and to point people in the direction of Jesus Christ. Honestly, one of my favorite things about the Bible is that it allows us to zoom out and see the world from God's perspective. And what I consistently find is the farther I zoom out and see the world from His perspective, the smaller this world's problems become. And that's what will happen this morning as we talk together about safety in the stronghold of God from Psalm 46. I believe this will help calm any anxiety we might have. It'll help us have a more balanced perspective about the crisis that we're in, and it'll give us certainty in a time of so much uncertainty. And here's the main point today. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. It's called the coronavirus because when you zoom in on it with a microscope, you see that it has these little spikes all over it that resemble the spikes of a crown. The word corona is Latin for crown. And what I want to remind us of this morning is that God is the one with the true crown. He is the king over this world, not some virus wearing a fake crown. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. With that said, I want us to go ahead and read Psalm 46 in its entirety because it is just so powerful. It is just so comforting to just read it together. Let's read beginning in Psalm 46. It says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, and though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations made an uproar. The kingdoms tottered. He raised His voice, and the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations in the earth. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold." Let's notice a couple things about this psalm. First of all, you notice that verses 7 and 11 are repeated for emphasis. The phrase Lord of Hosts is God's designation as military commander, which was the primary role of a king. It's a picture of him being in charge over a host of armies, so that it is not just God who is fighting for us, but it is God and all the spiritual forces that he has at his disposal. That makes the first part of verse 7 and 11 a picture of God, our King, going on the offense to fight for his people. And in the second part of 7 and 11, God is referred to as a stronghold. And a stronghold was a defensive structure, usually in the middle or toward the back of a city, that soldiers would retreat to in times of crisis, like when the enemy breached through the walls. A stronghold is sometimes called a fortress or a citadel. Here is a 3D rendering of the fortress of Antonia. This is in Jerusalem in the first century world. God, as a stronghold, is our place of impenetrable defense against our enemies. So when you combine those concepts in verses 7 and 11, it pictures God's people playing defense by letting God go on the offense for us. We take shelter in him, and our great King will stomp all of our enemies under his feet, and he will be exalted in the earth. Verses 1 through 3 show us even when creation itself is falling apart, God is still there to protect his people. Verses 4 through 11, God has power over the nations that rage against his people too. God protects his people when nature is against us and when nations are against us. In our case, nature is against us right now. There's something about creation that is going haywire as people are being struck with COVID-19, but God is still in control. He is our defense and our offense. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. We are safe in the stronghold of God. With that said, let me give you 3 things to help our mindset toward this coronavirus situation. And then at the end, I'll give you some practical action steps. Number 1, don't minimize or maximize the problem. This is a serious concern. I appreciated Adam's Lord's Supper talk earlier, where he talked about the death toll of the coronavirus. Almost 12,000 people. It's 11,800 and something, and that's this morning again, Saturday. Tomorrow it might be higher, but almost 12,000 people have died in the world because of this virus. People are losing their jobs. Entire industries are shutting down. Psalm 46:2 mentions the earth changing, and even though it is poetic language, it does seem like life on earth is changing for us right now, and not in a good way. So let's not minimize the problem. Proverbs 18 and verse 2 says, "A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind." Instead of trying to listen and to understand what people are going through, some people are just really quick to dismiss the situation, to totally minimize this situation. I've seen 3 ways people minimize it. Number 1, conspiracy theories. Some people are saying, well, this is all just a hoax. This is the Democrats, and they're trying to get Trump out of office. This is just another way the government is trying to get control of us. China probably bioengineered this virus in a lab somewhere, and they're trying to bring America down. These conspiracy theories, they are not helpful, and they don't take seriously people's suffering. They don't seek to understand what people are going through. Secondly, unfair comparisons. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, he tweeted out that, quote, "the coronavirus panic is dumb." And he compared it to the death rate for car accidents. And he said, you're way more likely to be killed by a car than by a coronavirus. Well, that might be true if you just compare the current numbers, but car accidents don't multiply exponentially. So it's not a fair comparison, and calling people dumb for being concerned about the coronavirus situation is not helpful, and it doesn't seek to understand people's suffering. And thirdly, making a joke out of everything. Look, humor has its place. There are some hilarious memes floating around out there on the internet. Probably my favorite one is it shows the classic scene at the end of Scooby-Doo. And in Scooby-Doo, they always have the villain tied up to a chair or something, and they take the mask off the villain and show who's behind this series of attacks or whatever it was going on in the show. And so there was a meme about the Scooby-Doo team, and they're surrounding this villain, and they say it's time to find out who's really behind this coronavirus attack, and they pull the mask off the villain, and it's the Charmin bear. And he's looking kind of dazed and confused and has a look of innocence on his face, but he's the guilty one. So there are really funny memes, and I believe we need to laugh sometimes. We need to laugh about things because it allows us to take a breath and to have some relief from the stress. But I'll just say, for some people, it seems like all they do is post funny memes, and maybe it's just their way of coping with it. Maybe they're just terrified, and so they use humor and they tell jokes about it all the time. But we need to be careful with that because it makes it look like we're minimizing the situation, and it's kind of hard to think about how all we do is tell jokes about it while people around the world are dying. It's not helpful. It doesn't seek to understand people's suffering. But we also need to be careful not to maximize the problem either. While it's true that life on earth feels like it's changing, the mountains are not actually slipping into the heart of the sea, like verse 3 says. We don't actually have nations surrounding us and knocking on our door trying to kill us, like verse 6 talks about. The sky is not falling. And there is something that happens with the media that I call the magnification effect. Think about my index finger for a second. Now, my index finger is just a part of my body. It's an important part of my body, but there is so much more to me than just my index finger. But what if I were to reach all the way back to the back of the church building where the camera is, and I was able to just put my finger like a centimeter away from that camera lens? Well, now all you can see is my index finger because it's right in your face. You can't see any other part of me. All you're thinking about is my finger. That's what happens when every single news outlet, both on TV and in print and online, is talking about the coronavirus. That's all we see, that's all we hear, and that's all we end up thinking about because it's right in our face. And it's so in our face that we can't see that in the grand scheme of things, this is a small part of life on earth. Now, I know that may sound a little contradictory for me to use the word small when I just said not to minimize it. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of the world population and in terms of the percentage of people catching this virus compared to the world population and compared to the fatality rate of this disease and compared to all that has happened in world history thus far, this is relatively small by comparison. It's just that it's been magnified so much that it looks absolutely gigantic. And here's the great thing about Psalm 46 and so many of the Psalms is that they don't spend their time magnifying the problem. They magnify the Lord as king over all of their problems. He says, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. If you'll turn back just to Psalm 40, a few chapters earlier in verse 16, Psalm 40:16, let all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. Let those who love your salvation say continually, the Lord be magnified. Let's take a more balanced approach and avoid extremes in both directions. Don't make light of the situation, but don't treat it like it's the end of the world and that the sky is falling either. God is our stronghold. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. Secondly, know the difference between healthy fear and unhealthy fear. I want to point out a paradox in Psalm 46. In Psalm 46 and verse 2, it says that we will not fear at all. However, this psalm also pictures God as a stronghold. Now, the reason that's paradoxical is because it's fear that drives soldiers to retreat and take refuge in the stronghold. We have no fear once we're in the stronghold, but we actually need fear in order to retreat to the stronghold in the first place. And God actually designed us with a natural, healthy fear in order to keep us from dangerous situations. Some of you may remember Timothy Treadwell. He absolutely loved bears. And he determined that he and his girlfriend were going to move to Alaska and live among grizzly bears for 13 months in Alaska. And he was not afraid of those bears. And he believed that over time he had developed a special relationship with those bears, and they had a mutual respect for one another. Do you know how Timothy and his girlfriend died? They were eaten by grizzly bears. True story. He was foolish because he ignored healthy fear, a healthy sense of respect for a creature that was wild and unpredictable and bigger and more powerful than he was, and he died because of it. Using the stronghold example, it would be utterly foolish for soldiers on the brink of destruction to refuse to retreat to the stronghold. Once the enemy breaches the walls, if you want to live, you fall back to that stronghold for refuge. It requires healthy fear, though, to know that you need to fall back. When we hear about a virus that's wild and unpredictable and that's killing people, it's healthy fear that makes us decide, hey, we need to take some precautions here. We probably need to be washing our hands a lot more often. We need to be avoiding small group gathering and, yes, even canceling worship services at the PSD building. Proverbs 22 in verse 3 says, "The prudent sees the evil and hides himself, but the naive go on and are punished for it." Interestingly, in the Bible, the word evil can mean sinful, as in the opposite of goodness and righteousness, but it can also mean calamity and disaster. And it's true in both cases that wise people, they see evil, they see sin, and they hide themselves from it, but they also see calamity and disaster coming, and they hide themselves from that as well. I understand it might feel like we are in hiding right now, and maybe some of you are wondering, man, is this a lack of faith? Are we just being cowards by canceling worship services and staying home? I just want to assure you that's not what's happening at all. If you see a grizzly bear, you're going to hide. You're not going to walk up to that bear and say, you know what, Mr. Bear, I'm just not afraid of you at all because I know that God, He's going to protect me. And you know what? We don't do that either with seatbelts. We don't say, I'm not going to wear my seatbelt because God will protect me on my travels. And we shouldn't say about this virus, I'm not going to wash my hands, and I'm going to keep picking my nose, and I'm going to keep meeting with people because God will protect me. One of the ways God protects us is by giving us wisdom and a healthy sense of fear so that when we sense danger coming, we make wise choices. And interestingly, when you read through the book of Acts, even the Apostle Paul, unless he had specific instructions from the Lord or promised protection in a certain situation, he would flee from cities when the Jews were trying to kill him. That was not unhealthy fear or a lack of faith. That was healthy fear that said, there is danger here, and I need to get out of this city before I die prematurely, and I can't fulfill my mission to keep preaching. Here's a good way to distinguish between healthy fear and unhealthy fear. Healthy fear leads us to act on what we can control. Unhealthy fear leads us to agonize over what we can't control. You know, if I'm in Alaska, I can control where I live. My healthy fear leads me not to set up camp right in the middle of grizzly bears. Unhealthy fear would be if I lived in a city in Alaska, but I was absolutely terrified to leave my house for fear that a stray grizzly bear would somehow make his way down from the mountainside and wander into the city, and while I'm walking to the grocery store, he's going to jump out on the sidewalk and kill me. That scenario is so far out of my control that if I'm afraid of it and I'm paralyzed by that and I agonize over it, that is unhealthy fear. And I would suggest that is a lack of faith because I'm not trusting God to control the things I can't. Psalm 46:10 in the New American Standard, the first part says, "Cease striving and know that I am God." Literally, it means to relax and to let go. I'll tell you, my favorite translation, though, is from the New King James and the ESV. "Be still and know that I am God." Be calm. Don't be freaking out and agonizing over things you cannot control, because God will handle those things. Healthy fear of this virus, it leads us to act on what we can control. That's exactly what we're doing as a family here at PSD with these precautions. But unhealthy fear would be if we were up all night worried, what if this thing doubles? And what if this thing triples? And what if this thing quadruples? And it gets into our home and we lose our money and we lose our house and America becomes a third world country and there's a zombie apocalypse and it's the end of the human race as we know it. Be still and know that God is God. There are so many unknowns right now at this point that we just can't control. And it does absolutely no good to worry or to fret over things that are not within our responsibility or within our capability to control. God is our stronghold. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. And finally, God will bless us in this crisis. In Psalm 46, notice verses 4 and 5 again. It says, "There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns." As opposed to the roaring, foaming waters of the chaotic sea in verses 2 and 3, there's a peaceful river flowing through God's city. It should remind us of the rivers in the very beginning in the Garden of Eden in Genesis. And it should remind us of the river of the water of life at the very end of Revelation when we're back in God's presence. It is the fount of God's provision and blessings for His people. You know, the rest of the world may fall apart, but there is peace and joy and gladness among God's people because He is with us and He is a very present help in times of trouble. And we ought to keep our eye out for God's blessings. Think about some of the blessings we have as Christians in this crisis. We have shepherds that care about us here in this congregation. And they're thinking about how to keep us connected and united. They're thinking about how we can still continue to honor God in this crisis, to keep the flock together and unified in this trial. We have a church family who loves each other and will be checking up on each other to see whether we have needs and to meet those needs, to pray for one another as well. We have the peace of knowing if we use wisdom in the things that we can control, God will handle the things that we can't. We don't have an unhealthy fear of death like the rest of the world. We have God's amazing word to strengthen and encourage us. The word like Psalm 46. We know we're in good company with saints of old who throughout the history of Christianity have endured far worse trials than this, and yet were blessed by God in the end. We have a God who is with us wherever we are, so that even though we can't meet together, all together in this building, God is still with us where we are. We can still worship Him with our families and turn to Him for comfort. I honestly believe this is only going to make us stronger as a church family, because if we can stay united and together and connected when we are apart, we will be that much stronger when we come back together. Romans 8:28, we mentioned this in last week's lesson about tragedy. We know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. And in the at-home worship plan, you've already read the end of that chapter. You know how that ends. That despite all these things that we're going through, there is absolutely nothing that can separate us from the love and the blessings of God. God is our stronghold. We are safe with the one who wears the true crown. Now, with all that said, let me give you 4 practical ways to handle this situation well. Those first 3 points were really about our mindset, how we think about things. Here are some practical things to do while we're kind of in isolation in this kind of unique, unprecedented situation. Number 1, stay updated but not inundated. It is wise to stay informed about what's going on so you can continue to make wise choices, but too much news and too much social media scrolling can create unhealthy fear in you and in your children over things that you cannot control. Colossians 3:2, set your mind on things above, not on things that are on the earth. You know, all the news talks about is the earth. And if we are inundated by earth updates, the earth will be like that finger in our face, and all we'll be able to think about is this virus. Secondly, make the most of the extra time. How many times have you said to yourself, man, I really wish I had more time to read my Bible and to pray? Or I've been meaning to have this conversation with my kids or with my spouse, but time just gets away from me. Well, many of you will have more free time on your hands. This is a great opportunity to draw closer to the Lord, to draw closer to your family and to your spouses, and to help your family draw closer to the Lord. Ephesians 5, verses 15 and 16, therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Believe me, I know the temptation to just binge out on Netflix and all the live streaming stuff and have all kinds of screen time, but that is not going to be the best way to use your time. There's a time and a place for screen time. It can be good, but make sure that we're making the most of this extra time that we have. Thirdly, be extra patient with each other. Ephesians 4, verses 31 and 32 says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ also has forgiven you. Well, Brian, why are you pointing us to this passage? Well, let's face it, when we're all trapped in the house, fuses are shorter. Right? We're going to feel antsy. We're going to feel like, people are invading our space, and we might be a little cranky because we're out of our routine. You know, we're not used to being trapped in such close proximity with everybody for such a long period of time. Usually, maybe the parents are going to work or the kids are going to school, but now it kind of forces everybody to be together in close proximity. So let's commit ourselves to being more patient, being quicker to forgive, to overlook transgressions. Let's let love prevail in our households. You may need to call a timeout for your family and go take a walk, right? Outside is your friend right now. Go out and enjoy nature. Connect with the Lord outside as well, and that's going to help you from going stir crazy. You may need to set up privacy spots in your home, so maybe you can take breaks from being in such close proximity to each other for so long. Do what works best for you, right? But let's just not give Satan an opportunity to use our isolation to his advantage. Be extra patient with each other. And finally, be ready to share. Right now, the rest of the world is in hoarding mode and retreating inwardly mode. And I don't know what the future holds, but we need to make sure that we are keeping the lines of communication open, especially with our brethren, and keeping our hearts open to meeting each other's needs. It may be that some of our brethren lose their jobs, and they're going to need our help financially and emotionally and spiritually. It may be that some of us get sick, and we'll need to help make sure they get the meds and the supplies they need. And this is a great time to also share the gospel with the world, because people are scared right now and they need God as their stronghold now more than ever. The early church was a sharing church. They shared the gospel with the world and their possessions with each other. I love this set of verses in Acts 4, verses 32 and 33. It says, "And the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and not one of them claimed that anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. And with great power, the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and abundant grace was upon them all." This church in Acts 4 was a church making God their stronghold in a tough situation. And with this attitude, we will be victorious over the coronavirus and over any other enemy that comes against us wearing a fake crown, because we are safe with the one who wears the true crown. Well, we're not going to have our typical come forward as we stand and sing invitation, but sometimes it takes things like this in the world to wake us up and to realize that we are fragile and that our earthly life can so easily be disrupted. We have so many plans as human beings. Psalm 49 talks about how human beings, we think we're going to live forever. This helps show us that actually life is fragile and short. And that's why we need the Lord as our stronghold. And so if you're thinking about the fact that you've not made the Lord your stronghold, and that you're out there trying to fight the enemy, you're trying to fight not only the coronavirus, but you're trying to fight the sin virus that Adam talked about, and you're trying to do that all alone, there's no hope for you to win. You've got to retreat to the stronghold of God. Let Him be your defense, and let Him go on the offense for you and give you the victory. That's the invitation. And if you are ready to make God your stronghold, you can call me. You can call Adam. You can call the shepherds. We are here to help you. We will meet you at the building, and we will baptize you into Christ. This virus is not going to stop us from baptizing someone into the Lord. So if you're ready to make that decision and make God your stronghold, we are here for you to help make that happen. And if you are a Christian and you've wandered outside the stronghold and the enemy is just firing away at you with bows and arrows and you don't know what to do, return. Come back to the stronghold, because you are safe with the one who wears the true crown. In your at-home worship plan, you'll see it's not a typical invitation song, but we're going to sing Magnify, Oh Magnify, because that's what we want to do right now. We don't want to magnify the problem. We want to sing together and magnify the Lord, who is King over all of our problems. Thank you so much, and have a blessed rest of your Lord's Day.